Hello Crypto Finder crew. If you're like me, always on the lookout for an investment opportunity, then you've probably come across yield farming or staking in the crypto space. Now this is a topic I had to research and watch a million trillion videos on to fully understand. So my aim for today is to relay that to you in a way that is easy to digest and understandable without going into the techie stuff that is mind-bogglingly complicated. I'm about to introduce you to a system that allows you to earn between 4 to 10% of your investment fairly safely. Of course, there are ways to earn far more than that, but I'm just going to stick to the safer ones. Now, with inflation close to over 7% year on year, a lot of people are looking for a better way to get their return on their money. And a lot of them will turn to crypto without doing much, if any, research. So the question is, are these methods safe to do, and what do you need to know about them? Now, before I start answering the main question, it is really important that you understand some of the terminology I'll be using in the video. So first off, the big one, yield. Yield refers to the earnings generated and realized on an investment over a particular period of time. It's expressed as a percentage based on the investment amount. Yield applies across all industries, not just crypto. Say if you bought a property for £100,000 and let it out for £1,000 a month, then your annual yield would be 12%. 12% of the value you invested comes back to you annually. In other words, £1,000 times 12 months, gives you about £12,000, which is the 12%. There is a lot to consider when it comes to yield farming in the crypto space. And not only is it complicated, but it also keeps evolving and can be very high risk. We need to keep in mind that high reward equals high risk. That is inevitable. And the most important thing I want you to keep in mind is knowing what those risks associated with this bonanza are. When it comes to yield on your crypto, it is usually done in a few ways. You could stake your cryptocurrency, you could provide liquidity for a liquidity pool, or you could lend or borrow your coins. Now, in a traditional bank, if you leave your money in your savings account, the bank will pay you an interest for keeping the money in that account. In the UK, we'll call it an ISA. They reward you with interest because they're actually borrowing this money from your savings account and in turn lend it out to other people. They charge their borrowers a higher interest rate on the loan than what they pay you. So in other words, they are pocketing the difference in the interest charges. This concept applies to cryptocurrency, although it's not exactly the same. Gaining yields on crypto comes with risk. So let's talk about the least risky ones, which firstly is staking. You might have heard of this one. The blockchain needs to verify transactions for them to happen. To do this, there are two consensus models used. The first one is proof of work, and the second one is proof of stake. Now bear with me, this bit is important, so I'll make it as simple as possible. The proof of work consensus does a process called mining, which you probably have heard by now. Ironically, equally to the literal meaning of mining, it is by today's standards old school, dirty and inefficient, whereas proof of stake is a much more efficient and clean way of verifying transactions. The proof of stake consensus is called validating. Without going into deep, techie, complicated stuff, what you need to know is that for validators to work, they require a stake. And without a stake, they are not able to validate your transactions. Mining, on the flip side, only requires computing power to mine the blockchain. Back to proof of stake. Because it requires a stake of pool to function, those that contribute to the stake of pool get rewarded for it. So, in exchange for helping secure and verify these transactions, you actually get rewarded from the network. And for doing so, the typical APY, annual percentage yield, this staking is around 4 to 10% depending on the network and currency. You can also stake your crypto through a staking pool. This is when a group of coin holders combine together to merge their resources. This way, they get to share the rewards. Now, when compared to other passive crypto investment methods, the risk in staking is significantly lower. It's important to remember that the security of the staked tokens is proportional to the protocol's security. There are several significant dangers associated with staking coins, such as slashing, volatility, loss or theft, reward waiting periods, project failure, liquidity hazards, and extended lockup periods. All of these things you need to be aware of when staking. Next up are liquidity pools. The next way you can earn yield on your crypto is through what's called a liquidity pool. A liquidity pool is pretty tricky to understand, but I think I can explain without going into the mechanics of it. Now, imagine you go to a bank to exchange your currency for a trip abroad. Let's say you want to go to Europe. You go to your local bank or post office and convert the British pounds to euros. If the bank has euros, they will make the exchange at their current exchange rate. But say they don't have any euros left. This would be a pretty awkward situation as they physically won't have the capital to do the exchange. The availability of the euros they needed to make that exchange is basically the equivalent of a liquidity pool. So where does the money that's stored in the liquidity pool come from? Anyone can be a liquidity provider for a liquidity pool. If you're a coin holder, you can put your coins into a pool to create a market for other people. Traders will then use these coins as liquidity to swap for other coins. And in exchange for providing liquidity within that pool, you earn a portion of the trading fees from the swaps that the traders are making within that pool. Okay, so let's say you provide £100 of liquidity and the liquidity pool is worth £1,000. That means you own 10% of liquidity in that pool. If the trader's fees are, let's say, £200 for the day, you get 10% of those fees because you own 10% of the pool. It's thanks to your assets that they are able to make these transactions. It is important to note that the reward in liquidity mining depends profoundly on the share in total pool liquidity. Liquidity providers could face impermanent loss. In simple terms, impermanent loss means that the fiat value of a user's crypto assets deposited could decline over time. But this also applies to staking. Once assets have been added to a liquidity pool, they are controlled exclusively by a smart contract, with no central authority or custodian. So if a bug of some kind of vulnerability occurs, the coins could be lost for good. Now, lending and borrowing in cryptocurrency is a very new concept. There are some seriously smart people developing the next banking system in the new era. There is an insane amount of money flowing into the crypto market, and yield farming is basically the best place to put your money to get the highest returns. I'm going to do my best to explain something very complicated as simply as possible. The easiest way to understand borrowing and lending yield farming is if we once again use the property market as an example. You might be familiar with remortgaging. If you own a property, you can go to a mortgage broker and ask for a loan by using your existing property as collateral, meaning that if you can't pay back the loan, the lender of your loan will take your property in exchange. So by providing collateral, you are able to receive liquid cash in return. And similar to this, in crypto, you can lock away collateral in order to receive liquid capital to trade and use elsewhere while keeping your investment in the cryptocurrency of your choice. Now, let's put this into an example. Let's say you own 10 ETH and you believe that the value of your ETH is going to rise. But at the same time, you want to buy and sell other crypto assets. You can borrow another currency by locking in your 10 ETH as collateral. And in return, you would receive, say, 60% of that ETH. But in another currency. There will be an interest rate on the loan, but as long as you pay it off on time, you can use the funds. Now, because you've borrowed the equivalent of 6 ETH, you can now use this to gain interest by staking or putting it into a liquidity pool at a higher interest rate than what you borrowed the 6 ETH for. This is called yield farming. Now, yield farming can be an extremely high-risk investment. You really need to know what you're doing and keep track of every move. It must be calculated and thoroughly thought through. Most investors in this space actually lose money because of a lack of detailed understanding of what they're doing. An occurrence outside of your control can also happen, like a sudden drop of the value of your collateral asset, which in turn could liquidate your position whether you've paid the interest on time or not. That would mean you've lost everything. Now that we've covered the difference between different types of yield farming, I will next be making a video on which coins I believe makes the most sense to earn interest through. Now, if you want to see them, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and keep checking this playlist to continue watching more on this topic. I hope this has been fairly easy to understand. It's quite a difficult topic to grasp from scratch, but fingers crossed, I've done a good job explaining it to you. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.